going to go ahead and call the Hanover School Board meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock in the evening. At this point, and Ben is joining right now. At this point, the public can address the board. So Jay, you're going to run that if anyone has a comment or a question?
I will. I have right now 0 attendees. It's just panelists.
Okay. So we're going to move on from that. Agenda review. Does anyone have anything to add or remove from tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to move on to April Principals Report. Lauren?
Well, what a pleasure to see you all during this strange time. The box is on my screen. It's nice to see some smiling faces, though we can't be together. This is almost just as good. I hope you've had a moment to review my principal's report, and I do know that there is a part under discussion where we can talk more in depth about remote learning, but I decided to focus my principal's report on what the Ray School has been doing during these unprecedented times. When we originally received news of the school closure, I was really thankful to have the partnership of the whole leadership team, as well as the SAU, in thinking about what we needed to do on behalf of our staff, our families, the community, and our students. In the initial phase of our remote learning, our aim was to maintain skills and provide engaging activities from which families could choose to do those activities in a way that met their schedule and fit their family's demands. Throughout this whole process, we've been trying to be very cognizant of the multiple stresses that people are going through, some that we know and some that we don't know. So in this initial phase, our teachers got together, and this is teachers across the school, as well as all of our support staff, to develop menus and choice boards of activities from which parents could choose. As we realized that this school closure would be extended and then further extended to the end of the school year, we started to focus less on maintenance of skills and practice and more on new learning and new instruction. So our phase 2 of this remote learning process has been to ask our teams who stepped up to the plate and have done an incredible job to come together as grade levels and push out activities that prioritized the most important skills identified from the Common Core and NGSS. We had the support of our math specialist, Ingrid Stahlsmith, as well as Karen Dubois, who's our reading writing specialist, who helped us scour through all of the standards under reading, writing, ELA, and mathematics, and choose standards that for the remainder of the year, we would make sure that all of our students would be able to be exposed to and hopefully move towards mastery by prioritizing those skills and those assignments. After our initial phase of remote learning too, we took into consideration feedback that we received from the community after we pushed out a survey asking folks about the workload, the amount of times on screens that their students were having, any challenges they were facing, what they wanted to see more of, what they wanted to see less of, and any other feedback that they were willing to give us. There was so much support from the community that we're thankful for. And from the results that we received, we also were able to push out a few new recommendations. So rather than a large menu of choices, we prioritized a few assignments on a weekly basis so that parents felt that they had a better guideline about what their students should be doing in the course of the week, given the potentially limited time they would have to be able to support their students at home. Additionally, as I mentioned, we required that all grade level teams push out everything in alignment. So rather than students having different experiences across the grade level, all of our students are having the same experience across the grade level. The third thing that we found would be important was our continued focus on connection. And that has been what we've been, I call it our mantra, what we've been saying over and over throughout this process. So while we had some teachers that were doing one Zoom meeting per week and others that were doing multiple Zoom meetings for their class in the course of a day, we found a sweet spot based on the parent feedback of around 4 whole class Zoom meetings on a weekly basis. These aren't required or mandatory, but rather to give more opportunities for families to choose meetings that made sense particularly if they have students across different grade levels or across different schools in the district. Those parents could then create a family schedule of when students would be able to attend those meetings. And then finally, one of the recommendations that we had from parents was around being able to give some mini lessons and some instruction. So our teachers are either creating their own mini lessons or finding already developed fabulous mini lessons rather than reinventing the wheel, to be able to provide new instruction and some scaffolding and modeling as we're doing these new learning experiences for the remainder of the year. So at the end of the day, I am just so grateful for the support of the community from the SAU and from other school leaders, but I am so proud to be part of the Race School and to see all of the incredibly hard work and all the time that people have put into making this experience as tenable as possible, given the uncertain times that we have. At the end of my principal's report, and I'm going to look right at it, I listed a couple of my favorite lines from a blog that I caught early on, and I just wanted to highlight this one. From the blog, it says, "I want to remind you that although this is hard on you, it is also hard on the teachers. They found out when you found out. They are trying to do what they feel will be helpful for you during an unprecedented time. They are building the airplane while flying, and they have been working hard." So to echo that, I've told staff time and time again that I just feel so honored to be part of this airplane that they're building, and so in awe of the products that they've been able to create, or this airplane that they'll be able to build.
Thank you, Lauren. I had a question about the office hours. So do you get a sense of how many families are participating in these office hours with the teachers?
Yes, so we have office hours that are just open, and sometimes that looks like a Zoom meeting, and sometimes that looks like a teacher answering emails live, sort of as they're coming in during that office hour time. It is a time that's being used quite a bit by our families, so much so that we actually have our support staff also holding office hours to make sure that student and parent needs are being met during that time. So it is being taken advantage of in a really powerful way.
Great. And do you have any gee whiz stories or any things that you've learned that, and actually I probably should caveat this with, or start this with Jay. Do we have a log that we can capture lessons learned from all the different schools going forward? So next time we do this, or if we have to do this again, we can actually look back and see what we've learned.
I think we'll be able to do a very thorough after action review. If nothing else, there's plenty of email feedback to use to sort of reconstruct.
Okay. And Lauren, any great stories or any feedback that you've heard from parents or students?
Let's see. I think some of my favorite stories, so not one specifically, but this is actually really working for some of our students. So I've popped into some of the morning meetings that are happening, these whole class Zoom meetings, and one class, their assignment had been to go out into the woods and create some sort of a dam out of anything that they could find in the woods, and then come back and share out what they created and how it worked. So for me, sort of this overarching theme is this idea of being outside and having a lot of experiences that are kind of self-guided. That's been really powerful for our students. And I'm sure as soon as we move on to the next thing, I'll think of some of those knee slappers and gee whiz moments, because I know along the way there have been plenty of them. But overall, I think the value of students just having these experiences outside, but then being able to also connect with their classmates can't be understated.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Rick, I would just add on to what Lauren said. I find your Motivation Mondays just fun. Just having a chance for kids to see their teachers goofing around and having nice signs. I think it's been really helpful.
If some of you, I see you, John, I'm going to just say, if you haven't checked it out yet and you're not following on Twitter, every Monday we're posting these Motivation Monday videos set to music, and the staff sends in pictures of themselves with posters that have little motivational sayings on them. And it is pretty fun for the students and the families, and then also other staff members to see, everybody's face and what people are talking about. But go ahead, John, sorry.
I was just going to help kind of push your Twitter followers and say, if you're on Twitter and not following Principal at Ray, you should. The content that she's putting out is excellent. And through that, you're also seeing what other teachers are putting out and kind of being able to see what other kids are doing. It's been really neat to kind of follow along. So good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Lauren? Kelly? Sorry.
Hi guys. Yeah, I just wanted to echo Lauren's thanks to the teachers as a parent of kids in 2 different grade levels. I think the work that the teachers clearly put in over break, above and beyond, was evident. And it's been amazing this week. Both my 2nd grader and my 4th grader can just turn on their computer and access what they need to be working on for the day. And it really, I'm there to support, but honestly, it's set up so well that they can be somewhat independent in accessing their work, which has been so helpful, guys, for all that work that you did over break.
Thank you. Kim first and then Dan.
Thanks. So yeah, I definitely echo the thanks to the teachers and the parents, really kind of supporting the remote learning community that's going on right now. And it's really tough, but you guys are all doing amazing jobs. So thank you. Kind of a question along our curriculum alignment. So I'm trying to find, maybe there's a silver lining to this, or a lessons learned, kind of to Rick's point. I think it was maybe your 3rd point, Lauren, saying, each class or each grade has kind of a similar experience. So therefore the curriculum is very aligned. Any lessons learned from kind of summarizing and kind of aligning that piece per grade? And kind of maybe a question to Jay on how does that kind of tie into what's being done or with the curriculum audit, and where does that even stand? I mean, that's a broader question.
Sure. So we held a staff meeting today, as we have been on Wednesdays, which is a whole new experience when you have somewhere around 120 people in a Zoom meeting. That's different. Our staff meeting today was focusing on developing our building goals for next year and having conversations about where we stand now, reflecting on our building goals for this year and where we wanted to go. To start to answer your question, I think that what teachers shared today with the work that they've been doing is how hard it was initially to find some of that common ground, but how rewarding it is to see each other's teaching styles, the ideas that people are able to contribute to the team, and to really come together around what's best for kids. There was a real sense from the staff meeting, both this week and in previous weeks, that there is some sort of a collegial momentum that we're really starting to build in a very intentional way, though under a somewhat urgent circumstance. Sometimes urgency is the thing that triggers that tough work to happen. So I would say that the staff, in reflecting about this year's building goals and thinking about next year's goals, even more keen on the idea of consistency across grade levels, but then also in a very vertical way, even more keen on aligning what's happening across the grade level, and then thinking about how that impacts other grades vertically. So certainly there is this momentum that we hope to capture and then continue to build upon because it feels like a great success. It feels like very hard work, but also a really great success. So I anticipate that though this has been a crisis and though it's been triggered by a sense of urgency, that there is some real good that's coming out of it and will continue to come out of it in terms of curriculum alignment.
Thank you. Dan?
Oh,
Yeah, hi. Lauren, I have a couple of questions with the eye kind of towards generalizability for other teachers and maybe even other schools. It's kind of around global lessons learned that you've done that and what you found that has worked. So if I can just go through a couple things. So for my first question is what was the feedback from the parents just in terms of roughly percentage? Like, I mean, how many, do you know what fraction of parents responded to your survey?
188, I believe, was the count. I'm trying to pull up the survey itself right now.
Okay, so ballpark, that's like a sixth, a fifth, I guess, or something. I don't know, or maybe even a quarter of the families.
So I would say that, yeah, it's definitely not a sixth. It's more than that. And we had some that were responding for multiple children too, as well. So it was I would say it was probably between 30 and 40% of folks.
Okay, all right, that's substantial. Um, and I liked what you said about the kind of getting to the course concepts as a whatever guiding principle for classes. I think that's an important one generally, which maybe we'll also hear in the Dresden meeting that's happening in the high school and the middle school. Did your teachers, do they mind the principal pop-in? How are you doing that? Are you just doing it kind of at random? Are you trying to look in on everyone's class? So how is that going? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. So the first part of your question, do they mind the principal pop-in? No, not at all. If they haven't expressed that. When I pop into meetings, whether it's meetings with classes or meetings with grade level groups, it's not to intrude, it's to answer questions and repeat the message. I feel that has been beneficial to be able to be part of those team meetings for sure. I have been able to attend nearly every classroom teacher at least one of their whole group meetings. Many of them overlap during the day too, so I have to create a schedule for myself. For this next phase of remote learning, we actually have a Google Calendar set up so that I can see all of the meetings throughout the day, which has made accessing those meetings and knowing when they're happening a lot easier so that I can pop in and see what's going on.
Can I just, so about that Google Doc, who put that together? Did the teachers all contribute their schedules to it, or did you have to survey them?
Right. So we created a separate Google Calendar, and it was actually set up by Ruth Arjona, who's our tech specialist here at Ray. So she put the calendar up and then asked teachers to put their information into the calendar.
And I'm just, at the risk of using the word compliance, I'll use it. Was there 100, did everybody put their stuff in? Was there there was complete compliance. All right, thanks. I want to ask another question about the alignment. So was that a challenge? Did teachers have to sort of come to agreements, and was that difficult across grades?
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely, I mean, difficult, maybe a challenge, yeah, for sure. And maybe that's just semantics there.
Yeah.
It definitely took time for people to be able to feel like they were on the same page, because the way that we have been working up till now is that teachers are essentially teaching the same content throughout the course of the year, but not necessarily in the same sequence. So there was let's talk about what some people created, for instance, created spreadsheets with the standards on them and said, I've done this, I haven't done this. Teams were able to then go through and survey and see, okay, so most of us have done this, some of us haven't. So there's been a little bit of catching up as well. But especially heading into next week, this was a bit of a catch up. Let's all make sure that we're on the same, at least the same page for next week. Next week, it should be pretty clear and good to go for the remainder of the year after doing a little bit of catch up right now. It absolutely was a challenge. When you have a school full of talented people that teach every year,
Right.
basically the same grade and are very good at what they're doing, and then suddenly have to work with 3 or 4 other teammates and align that. It's absolutely a challenge, but they met it head on with very little pushback on that. They realized the benefit for one, the students, but then also we've talked about if something were to happen and one team member was not as able to create or push out content or do these mini lessons, how could we put some structures in place so that class wouldn't be left behind? So by collaborating together, they've actually found that they're doing less work now that they've set up the initial structure in terms of structuring the week. They're all contributing what they need to contribute. They all have sort of their assigned roles, and it's a lot more methodical. It's pretty amazing.
And now the vertical piece. So now, like the third grade teachers, when they're deciding what the core concepts were, talk to the fourth grade teachers about what are you expecting those. I mean, I know they know, but like what are the most important things that we need to reinforce in these last several weeks so that next year we can hopefully start, right away.
Right. So thinking about before April break, we had the 3 weeks that we were working on, and then we had April break, and now we're sort of starting fresh with this. We'll call it phase 2 right
Yes.
now. The majority of the work, if not all the work, has been just within grade level teams, and that was a lot. Moving forward, now that we're working with this 4-to-1 model, where Wednesdays are our day where we're meeting and planning and working together, we'll have more opportunities to be able to meet vertically, but that has not been the focus so far. The focus has been on just grade level alignment. But in thinking about, so what should third grade be thinking about for fourth grade? We have the value of Karen Dubois and Ingrid Stahlsmith, who have created documents around these core standards, or we call them power standards. So what they share with third grade, then they're sharing a fourth grade document that's building on what they've just shared with third grade. And same thing, fourth grade to fifth grade. So they have been conduits or liaisons between the grade levels, kind of building in this vertical alignment without having meetings around vertical alignment at this point.
That's really great. My last question is, I put you a little bit on the spot. How much time have you been putting in? I mean, has this
2
just
hours
kind
a day.
of, I'm really kind of curious. I mean, is it just like twice as much as a as normal?
Yeah, it's hard to quantify because it is just so different. I'm used to working a lot,
Yeah.
but I feel that this is different because I'm behind the screen all day. So I shared with a team earlier today, I said my Fitbit is yelling at me all the time because I'm usually up and walking around and going here and there. And now my Fitbit is like, why have you been sitting for 5 hours straight? So it's a different type of work. It's a kind of a different type of tired, as I'm sure you have all experienced. And we've always, been on call all of the time. It feels especially necessary right now. I would say, my day starts in front of the computer with email somewhere around 7 in the morning. And then I'm usually going until, I would say on average, probably 8 p.m., sometimes into the evening later than that, just making sure that we have everything ready to go. And I know that our staff and teachers are also pulling long shifts too. So we're all working really hard.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's lousy. We're in this situation, but my hat's off to you and everybody at Ray. That's you're really organized and on it and committed. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
One thing that's been nice too, that I actually don't think Lauren mentioned, is that the teachers are also doing one-on-one Zoom calls, and they've been nicely individual. Like in my daughter's case, my first grader, the teacher played Yahtzee with her over Zoom because she's in sort of that math phase. And like Robin Henry mailed us artwork because she knows my daughter is artsy. Lauren herself came to my house to drop off assignments because we didn't have a printer at the time. So it's been nice seeing, both as a parent and as a school board member, the due diligence that everyone's doing. So thank you for Lauren and everyone else for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else? Marcel?
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. This is one of the silver linings here, again, is thinking about all of the lessons that you're learning and that you're sharing with us, and I really appreciate it. And I was also wondering how you can capture over the long run how it's working for students that have maybe been more challenged or have had a harder time in the standard classroom setting, but who are maybe doing well or doing better in the at-home setting. I was wondering if there's a way to sort of capture strategies that we could keep and if how, I'm sure you're already talking about this, but I was just wondering what your thoughts were.
Sure. So in our discussion today around thinking about our building goals for next year, we're very sure that the beginning of next year is going to be unlike any other school year that we've experienced. So there was a big discussion about how the beginning of the school year would look and what we would need to carry on from what we've been doing with remote learning, the things that have worked well for students, as well as how we just bring everybody back together as a community. So I think, to answer your question, there's been a very real realization that school is going to look really different. And that could be a really great and exciting thing. Though I don't have the answer about how exactly we're going to capture it. I know staff is keen through this lens of building goals to figure out what has worked really well and how we can continue those things in the following year. I usually, our process around school goals is that we brainstorm as a team. I consolidate ideas, put a draft together for teams to review. Our networks committee then also, who's the advisory committee to the administration, the networks committee vets it, and then I present it to the school board. So while I don't have a concise answer for you right now, I believe you'll see it reflected in a future document about our building goals for next year and who we want to be in light of what we've just faced.
Thank you.
Marcel, another aspect to your question I think I heard was, what about those students who may be receiving special services? Was that part of your question?
I mean, special services, or even just the students who don't receive special services, but who maybe don't perform super well. I'm just sort of wondering if there's been any sense of how this has helped, or if this is an opportunity to find new ways to reach these students who may not get as much attention in other contexts. Like, this might just be another strategy, and if so, how do we keep track of it?
Yeah, for one thing I've learned in observing what's happening in our schools with regard to students who are identified, students who may be on 504 plans, that sort of thing, is just how important that face-to-face in-school instruction is for those students. And it's something that weighs, I think, on all of us, whether principals, superintendent, whoever. It's worrying about those kids that are on the margins sometimes, and what this is doing to them in terms of where they are in their learning when we come back to school next year, or even when we work this summer. One of the things that I wanted to mention when you asked that question is that we are going to need to start moving into planning for next year, and soon, because we're going to have some opportunities, hopefully, to do something, even if it's something remote, over the summer. We have some federal funds that we'll be able to either use as intended. We did have plans to continue offering some summer support at the Ray School with some of our title funds. We can actually reallocate some funding to maybe expand that sort of programming if that's something that Lauren and her staff want to do. But all those things we really need to be thinking about, like, rather quickly.
Right. With all of the conversation about the positive things that we have seen happening, it also brings to light issues around equity and access, and those cannot be pushed aside despite other things that we see working really well. We have been trying to identify, where there are gaps and try not to make those gaps become wider, but rather use this as an opportunity to really think about how we can be of best service to those kids that need us, whether through connection or through academic connection. And it's certainly, we have just an ongoing list of students that we check in with, because whether there's a concern that we have seen or have witnessed, or just they're on our hearts and on our minds, and we want to make sure that they're not on the fringe during this time where perhaps they don't have the best access to internet, or perhaps at home parents are working on the front lines and can't provide the type of support that other parents are maybe more able to provide. I think being really cognizant of those gaps and those equity and access issues has been it's been really on our minds a lot without necessarily knowing exactly what the fix is, but trying in all of our planning to be really intentional about thinking about all students, including those students.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Lauren. So now we're going to move on to business requiring discussion, district financials, which I think will be Jamie. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I was moving all kinds of papers around. I didn't want to make a ruckus. So as you can imagine, financials right now for all of the districts and really what's going on in the economy, it's kind of been trying to pin down a moving target. The principals did really a great job with their AAs and all of their teaching staff and aides on what they felt they were going to need when we thought we would be back at school by the first week of May, hopefully. Now that we know that we're not going to resume school as we knew it in person, many of the principals have been meeting with their folks to see what the next 8 weeks will look like and what the needs are. So as you can imagine, they've only been back now 3 days since receiving the notice last Thursday. And I know they're already working deep into the what do we need now for the next 8 weeks questions, because I've answered a multitude of emails. So I guess why I'm telling you this is because I had shared an early unaudited end of fiscal year report with the four board chairs. And I was going to update it for this meeting. And then I thought better of that because we've been back 3 days. The principals are trying to still wrap their head around what they need for the next 8 weeks. We've got right now purchase orders that were encumbered that are going to be released. And then we're probably going to be placing new purchase orders perhaps on the system for what we now think we're going to need, because we had originally instructed everybody, for best hope scenario, right, that we'd be back and be able to take a few field trips maybe, and so that being said, when you look at the documents that I did put up, and I struggled with putting them up, technology's been a little rough for us too. But I did repost documents that the budget committee folks, Kim, the board chairs, Rick and Jonathan Kelly had already seen. They have not been changed. I can tell you what I know that's not in print is that we will be getting more revenues in the federal reimbursements line for Medicaid reimbursement. As you knew earlier last year, that whole process in the state of New Hampshire and in the state of Vermont had been adjusted by the feds because we weren't following the rules across the country exactly as written. So it put a little bit of a kibosh in the processing, if you will. It's very difficult to spec out Medicaid reimbursement because they have to go through all kinds of vetting process. And then depending on what the total dollar amount that you've submitted is as a percentage of the whole, and then you get a percent back. So that being said, in the past, we've received, anywhere from 100 to 150,000, depending on the kiddos that we're servicing. When I asked Rebecca Magistro, who does that for us in-house now, she said, oh, it's tough because, they don't want to give you a number that doesn't come true, right? She said, I want to be conservative. I'd like to say like 50,000. And I said, okay, I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to say 35, and anything above that's a bonus, right? Because right now, as I've projected this out, I projected out that we were not going to get any. Okay, so I'm going to tell you we're probably going to get between 35 and 50 for this fiscal year, which is 19-20. And the bulk of those funds won't come in until probably July and August. That's how long it takes them to process Medicaid reimbursement. That being said, I believe it to be true. I need to go back and dive into it, but I believe we actually received more Medicaid funding after the 18-19 budgets were closed. Okay, so that revenue will be recognized on this year as well. So there's more revenue that's going to be coming in. So to make a long story short, I think what I can comfortably say to you is that this early unaudited end of year fiscal report at 4.9, that number is not going to go down. Okay, the numbers that we're projecting as surplus will not get smaller. In fact, they may increase a little bit. Okay, because I know that Lauren's waiting right now to release a bunch of purchase orders, and they're also trying to figure out again what they all need for the next 8 weeks. I am still working through, we don't have the finals in yet for the first 2 weeks of March from the food service folks to wrap that up. I can tell you right now in the food, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but it fits, so we'll just roll with it. In the food service section, we're serving 69 students in approximately 42 families. And for all 3 districts combined, that's going to be about 32 grand. So the dollar amount of the money to feed the rest of our kiddos that qualify for Hanover fits within the budget that's already there for the free and reduced section. So we won't go over, and it's already encumbered. I've spoken to Lauren. I sent her an email just because it's quicker. I met with Tony. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. It might have been Monday. I think it was yesterday, maybe Monday. I don't know. We went through all of Hanover's needs and some things that, you know, maybe hadn't been completed. We came up with a game plan with regards to the building and site project needs. I've shared that with Lauren and asked her to go through it. She just got it, I think, yesterday. So we'll come back to you in that respect. In these projections that I've given you, I have fully encumbered all of that money for projects, and all of the projects that we're looking at doing have to do with safety and security. Okay, so anything that's fluff, we're not doing. But if it has to do with safety and security, I would like to keep it on target, because I don't think it's a good, it's not good to let our buildings suffer in that respect. So that's included in these numbers. What else can I tell you? For next year, we met with the budget committees, and I'm going to let Kim jump in here because Kim did a beautiful job of an email that she followed up on with some really great proposed goals and a draft action plan. I'll let her share that with you. Kim, I did take just excerpts of it and I shared it with our leadership team because I think it really, you know, it really took all of the thoughts that were shared at the meeting and it really put them together nicely. So I sent that along to them. I just did the highlights. So that's where we're at. And I think we're going to have a whole lot more information for the May meetings. You'll have a whole lot more information for the Dresden meeting probably.
Thank you, Kim. Did you have something?
Sure, I can add. So to kind of just to summarize for my colleagues, the projection that you're looking at now looks better than it did back in February and March when we had a school open. So it's probably not surprising that we've had some savings. That is helpful when we're thinking about next year because we get to carry forward some of that. Just so if we all kind of refresh our memory, we have in the 2021 budget, we had assumed $200,000 would be carried forward. As of the 4.9 projection that Jamie has, I believe, and I'm looking at video, but I believe it's about $91,000 more. And it sounds like it could even be higher than that, just from what we're hearing that there might be other revenue and maybe fewer expenditures. Right. So that's a little bit where we are, and that also already includes the $100,000 fully funded for our tuition reserve. And so that's just kind of the layout of where we probably are. If not, that's the most conservative estimate for where we are. Kind of bringing to what Jamie mentioned as far as kind of what a proposal could be. One thing that I think is really important, well, one, what we learned on the budget committee call was that the law is we need to raise or ask our respective towns in Hanover to raise the amount that our voters voted on. We can't, as a board, legally, from what I understand, ask for less, acknowledging a change in financial situation for some of our townsfolk and businesses. So we are where we are, I guess is a way to say that. So we will be required to ask that amount. And I think that is an important message that we need in one phrase to communicate to our town. And so what I had proposed in there, and there's a couple of other, there's several other topics that I think if this board agrees that maybe the budget committee, with working with Rick as the chair, kind of maybe draft a letter to the town highlighting what's been done to date, the amazing work that our teachers have done, really make sure that the community understands what's all taken place in case they felt it as parents or anything. And kind of also explain what needs to happen as we kind of move down the road. And also as a board, or maybe through working in the budget committee process, take a look at what do we have as expenditures in 1920 in our current year that we can kind of maybe increase that carry forward, acknowledging that there are difficult times and we can only really affect the tax bills that will be coming out in the fall if we're able to increase that carry forward from 1920. We can't remove expenditures that we were expecting to have in 2021 yet. That surplus will be felt the following year. So basically the email was essentially, do we think as a board, it was really a question, do we think as a board it's important to communicate to our town as individually as a letter or some other manner by the end of May to explain kind of this process, and that do we think also, and maybe part B as a board, should we kind of look through at the board level to determine what expenditures should we delay or forego, even if the savings of that will only be felt the following year. So kind of should we is a question. I don't know if we all agree, we probably don't, but basically should we have the budget committee look at any of those topics? And that was it.
And I'm just going to jump back in. Thank you, Kim. And I'm happy to share that. I just didn't want to be presumptuous and post it, but I can post it because I have it saved. And the other part of it is that, as Kim mentioned, that once you ratify a budget in the state of New Hampshire, the towns, it's their responsibility to keep the school districts whole. And when I say that, it means that regardless of whether or not they have raised via taxation or any other means, right, through rooms and meals or any other types of taxes, that help to fund the local costs, regardless of whether they have the money in their bank account or not to send us, they have to keep us whole. And that forces a lot of our towns to go out and take out loans. They're called tax anticipation notes. So we have reached out to, and I think it's very prudent of us as a district and administration to perhaps freeze our expenditures for non-essential things at the opening of the 2021 year in order to be sure that the cash flow is there for our towns to be able to keep us whole without having to go out and take a bunch of different loans. And that's not to be draconian. I think by, September, October, we have a better idea what the cash flow would look like. We are right now, my staff, my finance manager is running pro formas on what our cash flow needs will look like to include all of our, payrolls, because that's 70, I think for Hanover, it's about 72% of the budget is payrolls and benefits. And then for building costs that we can't forego, loan payments we can't forego, all of the things that we know we have to pay on a certain time frame. But any of the discretionary expenditures for 2021's budget, to hold off on those, until we can make sure that everybody's okay, other than the expenditures that we have to make.
So what I'm hearing from Jamie and from Kim is several proposals that maybe we get a sense from tonight's board, whether we want to have both the budget committee and also the board draft a letter. Is that so? I guess the first proposal, Kim, was a letter from the school board to the town of Hanover, just talking about what we're doing and how we're proceeding, correct?
Correct. I think that's, and I was envisioning one letter maybe sent kind of on the SAU, so we might have this discussion again next week for the Dresden meeting. But just kind of in principle, basically, I personally don't want our town to think that our schools are immune when no one else gets to be immune. And I don't mean to be light with the word immune, but but I also think that we do have an interesting story to tell, that we're actually having more savings and surplus this year because we don't have an open campus, but that we can actually kind of help I think there's a story that we need to be able to communicate to say that we're not doing, we're not just sitting back and saying, well, good thing we got our vote out early, because I think there is we need to be reactive to that. And so I think the question is, do we agree that it's a letter? And if so, as on the budget committee, I'm happy. I think it makes sense for there to be more, working group discussion on what the letter should say, and then also what the actual kind of cost-cutting savings measures. I'm not necessarily saying cutting, but I'm just trying to figure out to get a whole sense of what our picture is that we can kind of carry forward into 2021 and kind of communicate that plan.
Yeah, so Jay, I assume this is not a formal vote. This is just a sense from our board, because then this will be brought to the Dresden board and SAU board meetings.
Absolutely. We'll be really expert at this conversation by the time we're done.
Okay. So show of hands who wants to support what Kim is proposing. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Ben, not.
I'm a little ambivalent of whether it'll be helpful, but I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm just not too enthusiastic.
Okay. So we got.
Can I ask why?
Go ahead, Kim.
Can I ask why?
Oh, I just think that's not really what people are thinking about right now. And I don't think a letter to the Valley News at this point won't really get much traction. That's just me being negative Nelly. If we are going to do it, I would also make sure it's also an email to like the entire parent listserv in addition to the Valley News.
Well, I don't think Kim, you were proposing a Valley newsletter. This was a letter to the town of Hanover and the select board.
Oh, I'm sorry. I read letter to the editor is what I interpret that.
Yeah, so similar, like the town of Hanover during their abatement issues last year sent out kind of an explanation where it can kind of get complicated talking about abatements. And so they wanted to kind of explain what the situation is and what they're trying to do to address it. And I think coming from the school board to say, we hear you, furloughs are happening, there are some tough times, businesses are really suffering in Hanover. to understand that we're trying to make as many accommodations as we can under the law.
Okay, so go ahead, Lauren. Jamie?
I would think it would be a public letter. We could address it to, the town of Hanover and residents of the town of Hanover and Norwich, because the Dresden piece will also affect Norwich. And as you may or may not know, in the state of Vermont, they're looking at a $90 million plus or minus ed funding shortfall. So
so even if we decide to do a kind of a public letter, I would still hope that we would coordinate with the towns so they're not getting surprised reading the first time what we've put into the letter. So, so it sounds like Hanover School Board's supported that. And then the second proposal was for the budget committee.
So kind of who would write this, and is it the budget committee kind of working on who would draft it? And then also, I guess, so that's maybe the next one is, do you approve that the budget committee is the right?
I think coming from Jay makes the most sense as the superintendent.
I wasn't authoring it. I was. It needs to be helped and drafted and coordinated and whatnot, but I wasn't anticipating having the budget.
Yeah, so maybe we'll wait to see what Dresden and Norwich and the SAU come up with. But if the budget committees from each of the school districts want to help, or we put together an ad hoc group, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, or I mean, it could be the 4 chairs. The committee could also be another venue too.
Okay. Then the other proposal I heard was directing the budget committees to start looking at non-essential expenditures or non-emergency expenditures. And can I get a show of hands if the Hanover School Board's in favor of that?
Awesome.
Marcella, you're looking ambivalent. You're on mute.
Sorry. I think I would just want to better understand what voting for that means, what supporting that means.
No, we're not supporting any decisions. It's just start putting together some options or proposals that we're not in the summer trying to do it when we have an opportunity right now to kind of get ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Kelly?
So one of the things that we had talked about as a budget committee last week, as a interim budget committee until we finalize our budget committees at the Dresden level, was whether hopefully the principals will be giving a lot of input into what some of those more discretionary pieces of the spending might be. So that I think, to Marcella's point, it's not me deciding, I don't think the second graders really need new boxes of pencils, right? That's a discretionary item. It would be coming more from the building principals to say, these are the items that we could maybe hold off on until December or January, or these are the field trips that if we had to, we could hold off on these were sort of above and beyond, but that would be coming more from the building level through the budget committees.
Yep. Lauren?
So I didn't want to do a whopping topic change, which is why I raised my hand and then I put it back down. Yes, I was hoping that would come out of this discussion. I have just curiosities around what non-essential expenditures or discretionary expenditures are. When we think about how we would typically start closing out a year, our teachers would be starting to generate, PO requests around classroom supplies, because as you all probably know, we don't require our kids or families to go out and buy school supplies. That's typically something that has been funded through the budget. So if we're going to change the model, I just want to make sure that I understand really well the definition of non-essential expenditures or discretionary funding, and that's a conversation that can be had to really make sense to honor our taxpayers, but then make sure that we have the structures in place so that our kids do have what they need, just even going into the school year, not even thinking beyond the summer at this point.
Jay?
Yeah, I want us to be really cognizant of what this all means, because we weren't just talking about delaying buying supplies when we had our meeting with the budget committee. We're talking about not filling positions. We're talking about making those determinations about what's essential and what's not. We had conversations about not filling vacant teaching positions that would still allow us to stay within our maximum class sizes. So there are a lot of things that we discussed in that meeting, as well as at our leadership team meeting, that will come out of the work that this committee does.
Lauren?
Yeah, I'm glad that that came out of this conversation too, because at the end of the day, if we're talking school supplies versus FTEs, we're not going to save much money by not buying pencils. So I was wondering if that was going to come out of this conversation as well. So that's helpful to know that that's part of the discussion. A difficult discussion, but obviously needs to be had.
Yep. Kim?
So I'm actually going to put my hand down.
Okay. So the sense we got from this past vote was that Hanover School Board is supporting the ongoing discussions, and we'll wait to see what happens with Dresden, SAU, and Norwich. Is there any other? Yes, Kim.
So just kind of getting to the kind of Hanover town being the backstop and that they are required to fund the schools. Just hopefully to give a little bit of a sense of somewhat of comfort is that the town of Hanover actually has a pretty large, in comparison to others, kind of a piggy bank, if you will, for that account, that, and those funds are kind of shared that the school can kind of tap into. So it sets around about 18%, I believe, is the level of the budget that they can kind of keep and carry over, and they can only go up to a maximum of, I'm going to get this wrong, so don't quote me, but only a couple of percentages more than that. So they're pretty fully funded from that perspective that they can be, and they need to pay the schools. So there's, while we might feel, if we look at our own reserve funds, that, you know, we wish we had more in situations like this, we actually do, it sits over at the town level. So.
Thank you. Kelly.
And I did just want to again point out, and in case there are people listening who don't know this already, that, you know, we're talking here in this meeting about the Hanover budget. When we start to talk about the Dresden budget and the Vermont piece comes into that with more urgency, it's going to be, I think, a different kind of discussion, because the funding models are so different between the two states. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that while I think Kim's right, we are going to have some a need to sort of hold off on some spending, identify areas that we might be able to wait on discretionary spending in the Hanover side. The situation is different when we look at the Hanover budget compared to the Dresden budget. So those are going to be different discussions for sure.
Okay, Lauren.
I just realized I would kick myself if I didn't say this now, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. For some people that are watching, which probably includes staff members or that will watch later, this will be some of the first time that they're hearing about these conversations, and obviously there'll be some anxiety now having heard that we're looking at all things, including positions. So I would just like to say out loud what you all already know. You know, the budget that we created is what we believe that we need. And when we think of teaching positions as perhaps discretionary or non-essential, that will certainly have to be a much greater conversation with a lot of guidance and discussion, because obviously that is a bigger ticket item. But to me, in the budget that we propose and the iterations that we have gone through all together, when I think about staff, thinking about that as discretionary tends to be a little bit challenging, given the iterations, the conversations, the things that we have gone through. But we are in unprecedented times, and so knowing that, and just having full faith in this school board and in our community, I know we'll arrive at decisions that make sense for taxpayers, make sense for the schools, and ensure that kids are still getting what they need from their education here in the Hanover School District.
Thank you, Lauren. I couldn't say it any better. Jamie?
Yeah, and Lauren, just so I'm clear, when I discuss discretionary, I don't discuss FTEs. Okay, that's when I say it. Discretionary to me right now, $9.7 million of your budget at Hanover is salaries and benefits. Okay, your total budget is 14.6 for 2021, not for the year we're in. Oh no, that's for the year we're in. I'm sorry. For 2021, it's a bit higher. So, you know, 67% of the budget is salaries and benefits. And so when I talk about discretionary funds, I don't include that in my discussion. Okay, just so we're clear. But to Jay's point, that was discussed during the budget meeting, you know, and revisit that we had last Thursday, which was a public meeting. So I think it was more on the order of potential administrative positions, but class sizes were discussed as well. So.
Any other comments, questions? Kelly?
I'm probably speaking slightly out of turn here, but I do just to Lauren's point that some people, you know, I know it's an anxious time. And so I did just want to point out that at no point in our discussions thus far has anyone talked about, you know, reducing current FTE staffing, right? So what the people that we currently have in our buildings, we've nowhere near discussed, you know, eliminating any of those positions. So I just want to make sure that, you know, was out there, that that's not come up. And I personally, I don't anticipate it coming up. So I just wanted to put that out there explicitly.
Thank you, Kelly. Kim?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I and in my email that I guess Jamie's mentioning, you know, I said I think I'm maybe a naive optimist. I think we're going to get the funding that we need. I think I can't imagine a position where the public schools aren't going to get the funds that we need to do what we need to do and what the voters approved to do. So I want to kind of first set that, but I do think we will know a lot more when revenue is set by the state in October than we do now. And I think it's prudent for us to have a menu, let's call it, of areas where we could delay. Can we delay a hiring for 6 months or so? You know, that type of thing. So we know kind of what we're talking about. So if we're talking about filling an X $1 million hole, we can kind of already go to that pre-made list versus scrambling and trying to figure it out then. So.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else? Good discussion. And I assume we'll hear from the other school boards on the next steps. Remote learning update. Is that Jay?
Actually, Lauren made that her entire principal's report.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would only add that I've been like Lauren identified already. I've been so impressed about how our entire system turned on a dime with very little preparation and turned this into a positive. And it's moments like these that are always like show you what, you know, we always talk about how we value our employees, but when people step up and do the sorts of things that they've done under these circumstances, and I mean that for our families too, it really makes you proud to be associated with an organization like this. And I would just echo what Lauren said. I really feel privileged to work with all of you as well. You know, we're getting through this admirably because of pretty heroic efforts on some folks' part, and certainly people who are exerting incredible flexibility and grace under pretty scary circumstances.
You know, I'll just note the first couple of weeks, the amount of effort, hard work, extra hours was amazing. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, we've kind of settled into a new normal, a lot less email traffic going back and forth. It seems like everyone has kind of found the groove, and I'm very impressed. So moving on to business requiring action, approval of the expenditure. Do I have a motion to approve the expenditures? you're on.
I have them here if anybody has a question. And as you vote, I'm just going to write that you voted affirmative via Zoom. Okay.
Okay, so we're not gonna have to come into the office to sign, Jamie?
No, because this is taped. We're good.
Okay, so do I have a motion? Raise your hand if you want to move. Kelly,
Move to approve expenditures from March 13th, 2020 to April 17th, 2020 in the amount of $2,360,877.72 as presented.
we have a second. Ben? So I guess I'm gonna go around the horn, looking at my screen, starting with Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassi, yes.
Jonathan,
Hunt, yes.
Ben,
Heaney, yes.
Kelly,
McConnell, yes.
Dan,
Buckmore, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Thank you.
Approval of general assurances. The board will be asked to review and sign the general assurances for the 2021 school year. This allows the district to receive federal funding. Only the board chair needs to sign. This paperwork will be ready for signature on Thursday, April 23rd. So this is not a motion. I ask everyone to take a look at this document. If anyone has any issues, email me or concerns. And Jamie, I'll just wait to hear from you to come in and sign.
Actually, Kate will manage this. These are the assurances that each year we have to sign in order to be eligible for federal funding.
Yep.
So there aren't many changes to them. There are some references in the sort of the introduction about the impact of COVID and the fact that there could be changes to some of the grant programs and some of the eligibility criteria that are used to determine whether or not we get those funds.
Yep.
But it's the same boilerplate language that we review every year.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve, Kelly? Oh,
Okay, that's right. You said you didn't need a motion, but there is one in the listed.
yeah,
Okay.
I just saw that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Move to approve the 2021 general assurances as presented.
We have a second. Jonathan? Okay, going around the screen again. Kim?
Hartman, yes.
Marcella?
DeBlassi, yes.
Jonathan?
Hunt, yes.
Ben?
Heaney, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Dan?
Buckmore, yes.
Johnson, yes. Okay, approval of minutes for the March 11th Hanover organizational and regular meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
Wrong spot.
Kelly?
I ended up the wrong spot. Move to approve the minutes. Somebody else do it.
Tim? You're on mute. Anyone want to move up for the approval of the minutes?
I can't get the screen closed.
Hold on.
Ben?
Move to approve the minutes of the March 11th, 2020 board meeting as presented.
We have a second. Jonathan? Going around the horn again. Kim?
Hartman, yes.
Marcella?
DeBlassi, yes.
Jonathan?
Hunt, yes.
Ben?
Heaney, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Dan?
Buckmore, yes.
Johnson, yes. The approval of the non-public meeting of March 11th, 2020 as presented. Do I have a motion, Jonathan?
Well, I was going to bring up a quick point. I guess I should wait for there to be a motion, actually.
Yeah.
So I will do that. I will wait.
Someone want to make a motion? Kelly?
The right spot now. Move to approve the non-public minutes of March 11th, 2020 as presented.
Have a second? Marcella? Congratulations. Is that your first motion or second?
No, I think I did in the last meeting.
Okay. So we have a discussion. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I removed myself from the non-public discussion during that due to a potential conflict of interest.
Yep, I remember that.
Is your name on there?
It's written in there, yeah.
I can
So
make
Dave-
sure to make that amendment.
Okay. So there's a motion we're gonna have to amend it, so,
Accepted.
okay. So all those in favor of a motion to approve the non-public minutes of March 11th as amended, gonna go around the horn. Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassie, yes.
Jonathan,
Hunt abstain.
Ben,
Keeney, yes.
Kelly,
McConnell, yes.
Dan,
Yep, Rockmore, yes.
Johnson, yes. Okay, approval of policies. So these are the, Kelly or Ben, do you want to talk about these two policies? We've already,
Kim.
I'm sorry, Kim or Ben, do you want to talk about
I
these? two
don't
pol-
want to talk about that.
Yeah, these are a long time ago in a world that has changed many times. I recall nothing, but I think this one, we've talked about them several times. I don't think it's changed since the last time we've looked at them, because there has not been a policy meeting since the last time we've looked at them. So,
Yeah, so we've already approved these, I believe, at the SAU in Dresden, I believe, or we were intending to. Actually, I shouldn't even remember. I'm not even technically on the SAU policy committee anymore, I
yeah,
don't think.
get out.
So,
Hey, do you have any, were these policies approved at the other boards?
These are already
I
approved.
believe so.
I think so.
Okay.
Anyone
Yeah,
have?
at this point, I think I'm the only member of the policy committee in Hanover, right? The other two are both Norwich folks.
Please do a good job, Ben.
Is there any doubt?
Do I have a motion to approve these policies?
I'll do it.
Ben?
Move to approve DAF, Administration of Federal Grant Funds, DFA, Investments, and IJOA, Field Trips and Excursions as presented.
And I'll note, one of the policies is not listed, is not published here, the IJOA.
No, the DFA is
Yeah.
not.
Oh, I'm sorry, the DFA. I was looking at the wrong order.
Kim, do you recall us having a policy called investments?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay,
we have to approve it
every
I'm doing
year.
a great job.
annually, and we approved it. We actually, I revised it or created it last year.
Okay. So Jay, you'll just upload that for,
Yep, we'll attach it to the agenda.
okay. So we got a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Jonathan, going around the horn. Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassie, yes.
Jonathan,
Hunt, yes.
Ben,
Keeney, yes.
Kelly,
McConnell, yes.
Dan,
Rockmore, yes.
Johnson, yes. Approval of the 2021 tuition rate. Jamie, did you want to talk about this? Oh, you're on mute again. You're still on mute.
I know, I was out pulling down DFA so I could post it for you. Sorry, I was over multitasking here.
Is there anything to add to the tuition rate?
No, we set it every year. We don't have any tuition kids. It's based on information. It's always been done this way, quote unquote, right? It's based on information from the 1920, the year we're in, and then
Okay.
forward.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve? Kelly,
Move to approve the 2021 tuition rate in the amount of $22,700 as presented.
second? Jonathan? Okay, going around the horn. Kim,
Hartman, yes.
Marcella,
DeBlassie, yes.
Jonathan,
Hunt, yes.
Ben,
Keeney, yes.
Kelly,
McConnell, yes.
Dan,
Rockmore, yes.
Johnson, yes. Okay, report of the chair. And I don't have anything to report. Our next meeting will be right now, May 13th, 2020. And turning it over to Jay for superintendent's report.
All right. Well, way back in the meeting, Kim asked a question about curriculum and some of the work that had been done at the Ray School, and then also asked about the larger efforts that are underway. I have a meeting with the team from Penn next week, and we'll be going over their report and developing some sort of a plan for how we'll present it to you into the larger community. So we'll have that, and we're looking now, we had hoped to do that in the end of April. We're looking at May at this point. The other thing that we've got there hanging out that's of importance is the strategic plan. So I'm also meeting this coming week with Mark, our facilitator, to figure out how we should very easily be able to pull together a Zoom meeting to continue that work, that vision of a graduate work. And at this point, I feel comfortable enough with what's currently underway with the rest of the management of our district that reintroducing those two things, I think, that are important to maintain some continuity. So I'll be ready to report back. I'll have information to share at the Dresden meeting about the curriculum work in particular, because I'll have had that meeting. And most likely we'll have already had the meeting on the strategic plan as well. I'm sorry, that's my report. Waiting for the rest of it, right? Paul Harvey style.
Yeah, I was waiting for you for a conclusion there. So Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you for the business administrator report.
Okay, so as mentioned before, this should be pretty quick. We are continuing with our food service operations in a very small, condensed manner. We have one person from the cafe services heading it up at the high school kitchen, because that made sense for all 4 schools worth of children. We have our 2 workers from RMS who are helping in preparation. We are using 6 bus drivers to accomplish the passing out and handing out of the food. I have to say that Karen Wright and Shannon Howe have been instrumental in helping me with that. And then Mel Candon is the person from Cafe Services coordinating all of that. And then our 2 workers are Shauna Sandville and Lisa, oh gosh, I think it's more. So it's been honestly a joint effort, and people have been very, very appreciative. And I would like to put a shout out to Pete and Jerry's Organic Eggs, who reached out to the superintendent and possibly Lauren. Lauren's been fielding a bunch of calls from folks wanting to do something to help the folks who are in need. And we took a delivery of 90 dozen eggs yesterday, and they were distributed today to the families in need. And people were just super excited about it. The thanks have been really lovely. We've had other businesses reach out as well, Ramunto's and a couple of other organizations. So we're working through all of that and how we can accomplish that. Some other special things for them. I've met with Tony. We've gotten through Ray's school. Again, we've sent the information off to Lauren so that she can go over it with her lead custodian and the folks on site there to see if they concur with our list of things that we want to get accomplished with this time that we've been presented with. Again, I'm going to just go quickly, although Lauren hasn't had a chance to give it an amen. Most all of it has to do, again, with safety and security. And then just building envelope, right? We need to have some repairs to the siding that is getting to the point of no return, so we're taking care of that. Asbestos removal, ongoing roof review and repair. We have a 5-year-old large hot water heater tank that's leaking, and we've been limping it along. That's a $10,000 expenditure. We're looking at the entryway for the school entrance where we allow people in. We're looking at a plumbing clean out that's been an issue in our 3rd grade pod. We have some tree removal that has to be done. The trees are getting to the point where we have concerns. We'll be taking care of and repairing while we have the chance, with not everybody climbing all over everything. Repairing the playground equipment. There's some pieces of equipment that need some repair. And then again, working on the safety conditions around the outside of the building that were mentioned at some of our prior meetings, where we did secure some funding for some beautification. We also have some other areas logistically outside of the front entryway. And then getting the outside PA speakers updated so that people can hear them in case there's a safety issue. So that's been passed off to Lauren. We've had folks who have, everybody's been working and they're working hard. The hours have been odd because you have to do the work when the work presents, right? And you never know whether it's going to be 10 hours in a day or 4 hours in a day, but all of your folks at the Hanover School District are engaged and working. And many of them have said that they would like to be involved in painting if it's available. And, we've put off a lot of the painting projects because to hire labor is very expensive. So we're asking Lauren to also take a look at the rooms that we haven't gotten to yet. And, we can afford to buy some paint and folks want to come in and do the labor in that respect, manual labor, if you will, if they have a few hours remaining, we'd love to have them. And we'll make sure that they're safe. Okay, so that's maintenance and custodial, and they're doing well, and we're keeping them informed, and so they're happy. We've made masks for them, the cloth masks. They're all styling, got nice looking masks. I made 12 of them. I went through 4 designs. It was scary, but I got it done. And I had helpers from, we had 2 other people making masks. One was your nurse was sewing masks. That was awesome. And then Kelly Hersey from the Norwich School Board was sewing masks. So the guys across all the district have very nice masks that they can launder and rewash. And our bus drivers have them as well. The last thing is the Hanover Local School MS-22, which I do have in my hand, and I will need to secure signatures. I've attached it. I attached it late tonight, but if you go out, go back in, it will be there under my tab. It's what we have to file with the Department of Revenue Administration after our vote was taken and the budget was ratified. That gets filed. They're running behind at the DRA for obvious reasons. And so we did file it in a timely manner, and now we just have to file the signature page once we can figure out logistics for that. I will tomorrow put it at the front desk in a very lovely colored folder if you're out and about and near us, or you want to come in on your own with your fob. If you have your fob and you want to come in on your own, I have to think about that because, yeah, all the doors in between are locked and you can't get there from here. We'll figure it out. If you want to come after hours, let me know, and I could probably put it outside into the hallway just beyond my office, and your fob would work there. Okay?
So Jamie, we don't have like a DocuSign type of software to email for us to all sign?
Nope.
Well, I would say we do. We've been using it for our contracts, but we haven't applied it to this kind of documentation yet. So
Yeah,
we can do that.
I'd have to ask the state if they'd accept it. Let me find out. I'll email the DRA and ask them if they'd accept that, Rick, and then if they will, we'll get something set up.
Okay. Great. And we do have a member of the public who has joined us. I've reached out by chat to ask if he would like to ask any questions or have any comments.
Chat.
Now, I just promoted Rob to a panelist, which will allow him to participate if he wants to.
Hi, Rob. This is Rick Johnson, the chair of the Hanover Board. Welcome.
Hi, this is actually Jane Chambers Rice's wife, and we're just we're both live in Hanover and have a son who goes to Hanover High School, and we're also Lebanon High School teachers. So we're just I'm just dropping in tonight just to see what your school board meeting's like.
Welcome.
See if you have the same issues we do.
Great, great. So just so you know, I'm gonna now put you back to an attendee.
Thanks.
So,
And we're kind of at the end of the board meeting. We're going to have to do a non-public session. Jay just informed me. So with Jamie's report complete, we're going to have to move into a non-public session. And the RSA number there is correct, Jay?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Can I have a motion to move into non-public?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question. I'm sorry, may have missed it. How are we going into non-public?
So I'm going to turn off recording and turn off YouTube. So we'll need a couple minutes to make sure that we're actually non-public.
Do board members have to do anything or just be
You
still?
want to just stay right where you are. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Lauren that you tell everyone good night so that we can talk about you.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Thank you. Sounds good. Are we going to be coming back into public session or will this be the end for me?
I believe we'll have to come back into, is there going to be a vote after the non-public there, Jay?
No.
No, okay. So, yeah, we're gonna have to come back in to close out the public session, but there won't be any more discussion after that.
Okay, I'll remove myself from the meeting and then maybe if somebody wants to let me know when we are going back into public, then I'll just click back in. Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Okay,
It'll just be to click into a motion to adjourn if you have other things to do this evening, Lauren, but I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
okay, then I'll just leave it there. Thank you so much, everyone. It was good to see you. Thank you for your continued support. Really appreciate that very much. Stay well, stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
And then we have Bridget.
Yes, I was trying to figure out what you need me to do or not do.
Bridget, I think you're fine. I think this is going to be a brief non-public and then we're going to adjourn immediately after the non-public unless, Rick, you have any other
Okay.
business.
I don't have
Okay,
anything
so
else.
I can just leave the meeting at this point then after we vote to enter into non-public.
Perfect, okay.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to move into non-public?
No,
Oh, Jamie?
Jamie. So-
Do you want me to stay in non-public?
Yeah, Jamie, sure.
Okay, move to enter into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3C personnel.
Second?